Hi, this is John Lacey, and you're listening to the JOJCAST, which you can hear at johnofjordan.com, and now as part of the Podpocalypse lineup at podpocalypse.wordpress.com. Today on the show, we have an American teacher who is currently teaching English in Korea and using YouTube to share his experiences under the name QiRanger. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hello, John. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. I should
Excellent.
probably start by asking you something that I've wondered about for pretty much as long as I've known you, and that is simply, which came first, the interest in online video or teaching abroad?
Oh, well, that's difficult to answer. I am one of those individuals that have had a wide range of careers, but one of the fundamental aspects in each one of my jobs over the last 20 plus years has always been in education. And I've worked in higher education and volunteered at elementary schools and high schools while back in the States. But it wasn't really until I started traveling in 2007 and 2008 that I really decided to try and teach abroad. And I really got into videos, at least producing them on somewhat of a regular basis in 2008. Or 2007, sorry about that. And I think to answer your question most accurately, that technically the video making hobby came first, but my love for education has been around for several years.
I understand that you've actually, or you're in the process of arranging a special spousal visa for your partner, Joe. So, firstly, congratulations, because I know that was something that was very important to you.
Thank you.
I guess it must be difficult to be so far away from friends and family.
It is. You know, one of the things I think makes this job easier for anyone considering teaching abroad is having tools like YouTube and having tools like Skype, where you can not only communicate with them on a daily basis, but through webcams be able to see them. It's not by any means a substitute for having them with you, but it does make the distance a little bit smaller. So that being said, I am very much looking forward to, the next 3 weeks being, the last 3 weeks I'll have to deal with Joe not being here.
Well, that's wonderful. We see a lot of, I guess, humor derived from cross-cultural exchanges where something is perhaps lost in translation. But I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed about some of your videos is the tendency to really explore sort of the intersections of those misunderstandings. And I was wondering if you could perhaps talk about being an Englishee teacher in Korea.
Sure. It's a lot of fun. And one of the things I really enjoy about is I've had the pleasure of learning many languages over the years. I grew up in the south of the United States, so I learned Spanish, and it was very difficult to learn that language. And as I started traveling abroad, I started picking up other languages. So I have a great respect for the students that learn here, and the mastery that they have far exceeds my mastery of Korean. And what I've done is really try to understand their language and their culture. So when they make some errors in their pronunciation or something in class, it really helps me find a way to better correct them. And two of the most common mistakes that Koreans say when they pronounce English words is they usually add a vowel to the end of a word. So nice becomes nisa, or cast beer becomes kesa, or English becomes Englishee. And it really comes about from the way that Hangul is derived, and that you have to have a consonant and a vowel at the same time in each syllable. You just can't have a consonant like you can have in English. And having that understanding really helps me explain why the two languages are different. Now, sometimes an English teacher comes to Korea and never takes the time to learn Hangul, so they interpret it as, well, these kids just are lazy. They don't take the time to study and learn how to pronounce English words. And it's not so much that they're doing that; it's just that you have a phenomenon in ESL or language education called L1 and L2, where L1 is your predominantly first language and L2 is your second language, where you can be studying your second language, but you automatically drop back into your first one. And my favorite example from my personal experience is I was learning Indonesian, and I started counting from 1 to 10, and around 5, I dropped back into Spanish, even though that's not my first language. But I didn't even realize it until my instructor said, "Oh, you're not using Indonesian anymore." I'm like, "Oh," it was quite funny.
Well, I mean, we were talking about the nuances of language, and even the English language tends to take on different dimensions depending on where it's being used and who is using it. I'm just wondering, in a practical sense, in the classroom, is the focus on sort of British English or American English, or?
It's really focused on North American English, and the reason for that is that North American English is I guess, almost the world standard for what we call business English in terms of spelling and sentence structure. A lot of times we'll have stories in comprehension classes that come from around the world, and then we get into discussions, why is colored spelled with a U, or why is favorite spelled with a U, and why are they going into the lift instead of the elevator? And it actually offers a great discussion topic in class. I think our English teachers from New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and Canada sometimes have a little frustration because they have to remember to remove certain letters from spellings, or switch the R around when you do meter and theater.
Sure. I guess every teacher sort of naturally brings their own experience with them into the classroom, and I'm reminded of an example in a video you were talking about your love of Western movies, for example. And I was just wondering, do you find that these sorts of examples help students understand? And also, are there any examples that you've used that were perhaps too abstract and that they just had no frame of reference for?
It certainly does help them learn. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize about the education system here in Korea is that it is very driven. Now, I predominantly work with elementary age students, and they're in school, throughout the day, and then they go to their private academies like my school in the afternoons, whether it be for English, whether it be for martial arts, music, etc. But they're essentially going to school from about 8 a.m. in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. So I always try to find examples that, make it very light, such as, taking time out in my class to explain why a good yeehaw is so important to the story, or if there's a sound effect in the story that we're reading that each kid has an opportunity to make that sound effect. And it really helps because it really allows them to be a kid, where in this educational culture, sometimes they just don't have that opportunity anymore. As far as something that has missed, I'm trying to think of something. I can't think of anything offhand. Sometimes the thing that tends to miss is that when you're working with younger students or students who haven't had a lot of English education, the way that you'll explain something is sometimes problematic, because you can only use English in the classroom. So if you try to explain something like sticky, you can, how do you explain it to someone who's 7 years old who doesn't really understand the word sticky? And you start going into examples of what glue feels like, or taking a can of cola and leaving it on your friend's bicycle seat in the hot sun, so when they sit on it, it's very gross and icky. Mm-hmm. And you find yourself becoming a human thesaurus. And that's where, if something doesn't work the first time, you just keep on going and going and going until they get it. And then you see it in their eyes. And that's the awesome moment, is when their eyes, and they go, aha, and then they give you another example of what it was like. And that's makes it all worthwhile.